Starting. Okay. Hi. Hello.
They're all coming in, so we'll give a few minutes for them to enter and then we'll start. In the meantime, I'll post a few things in the chat. Okay. Welcome everybody who's coming in. We'll give a few minutes for everybody to join and then we'll get started with our thesis talk. I put a few messages in the chat with some useful links and information for you if you want to browse that while we wait a few more minutes and then we'll get started. Okay, so I think we'll go ahead and get started now. I want to welcome you all to our thesis talk today. My name is Caroline Vasquez. I'm the Assistant Director of the Office of Graduate Studies here at RISD. And joining us today is Yoon from the Digital Plus Media Department. She just received her MFA just last month in May. So congratulations, Joon. Joon is going to share with us today a bit about her thesis work, and in the chat I have added the link to the 2020 RISD graduate publication, which is our online platform for the thesis show this year. So Joon is going to walk us through a bit about her work for about 20 minutes, and then we're going to open it up to questions. There's a question and answer function here in the webinar, so if you could use that Q&A button to ask your questions. They can be anything for Joon specifically about her work, about the department, or just about life as a graduate student at RISD, and kind of get a student perspective on things as you get ready to transition to life as a RISD graduate student in the fall. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Joon.
Thank you, Caroline. Hi, my name is Yoon, and just like what just got introduced. So I'm from Digital Plus Media. I'm coming from painting background actually, and then a little bit of filmmaking background, and then I decided to join Digital Plus Media because I've been really interested in kind of poetic usage of technology, or how art world still gets so interested in the technological developments and vice versa. So, and my thesis it has specific theme of female sexual objectification online, but it started all from my personal experience, and my the first semester in RISD played a big role of writing and like working on this thesis for 2 years. So I'll go ahead and share my page first and read the graduate publication. So yeah, so I'm gonna unpack a little bit of like what I've been working on and like how it worked out, and what kind of practices I've done for this thematic concern. So all the thesis, my thesis work started from the video performance of mine a video performance of my persona, actually, that I created in first semester of RISD, which was 2018 fall. And it was to talk about the female sexual objectification that's specifically happening in online culture, because part of it was because it's such a big issue, and I was starting from my own experience, but then I also felt the pressure of kind of like talking about such a broad theme that can be kind of triggering to many people. So like thinking about how I'm gonna talk about it effectively was and that was part of the reason why I started to focus on my own experience. And then so I kind of focused on the sexual objectification happening online culture, which includes online communities, very masculine culture there, and video games, and also hetero sexual pornography was like my very direct references. And so yeah, I created this character persona called Mimi, named after a Korean doll that's kind of same as a Barbie doll back in the days. And it was a representation of the indoctrination of sexualization and kind of aggressive categorization of female identity, and also infantilization that's happening whether it's online or offline world. And so yeah, the way she poses and the way she speaks is a direct kind of interpretation of mine in this female sexual objectification. And then I have a video documentation that I might show later, but you guys can always visit this publication website, which is the great thing about this. So yeah, it all started with single channel video, actually, a fake kind of documentary slash fake video game playing video that I made. So it was a short narrative about this absurd video game that was also not a real game, but I created for the video. And then it was keep commenting on this same issue I've been talking about. And then it kind of developed into spatial installation, immersive installation, multi-channel video installations during the first year. And then I kind of moved on to more different iterations of installation in the same issue. And before kind of delving into my thesis practice per se, so this actual, because of this COVID situation, which is very unexpected and, unfortunate, but in worldly level. So I had to we all had to move out from our studio during March, in mid-March. And then even though it was kind of a very drastic change, I've been working on digital realm for a while. And because of that, thankfully, I could keep kind of working on what I've been working on, whether it was in a studio space or not. So this is kind of one of the example of a little bit of change in my practice because of the situation. I was trying to adjust, although I could still because this video performance was based on my own persona performance, I could take the video anywhere I want. But then I tried to kind of use the facility in digital media right before I moved out. So I was keep using this handheld scanners or 3D printers, stuff like that I could never get access to until we get back to the studio. So I started to use them kind of last minute, but then it was kind of working out within the same within my thesis theme. So this was kind of my practice of like capturing the performance in 3D format, and then I didn't use the specific images onto my thesis work itself, which was a video like multimedia installation. But then I still feel like it was kind of a great, it turned out to be kind of great opportunity for me to like work on this side theme. Not thankfully, but like somehow worked out as this COVID situation. So yeah, and because of the COVID situation, the thing I've been working on was always this specific like spatial multimedia installation, which I couldn't do anymore because I was planning to have at least 3 walls in this convention center we usually have thesis show in, and like darkened spaces and like a lot of projectors. And this is one of the example of like the beginning of all this thesis work, which was in last fall semester. I was using Fletcher Studio in RISD, where we're allowed to use as a graduate student. So it was, I was imagining something like this, but then it kind of, I kind of adjusted everything into home studio. So the scale got really small. The projector I booked out was really small too, but somehow it was working in a very interesting way. And then I could finally make this installation. I say it's installation test just because it was in home studio and it's not ideal situation for the whole piece. But then I'm quite satisfied with how it turned out. And you can look at the documentation video of this piece. So yeah, this is my living room. You can see the outlet and everything. But because I've been working on like video making and then kind of dealing with this spatial installation, I mean, kind of considering the spatial installation as like an extension of my videos or video planes or digital images that's expanding to a physical space. So it kind of worked out in an interesting way. And I think you can take a look at the rest of it if you take more time in this publication. And for this presentation, I'll move on to a little bit more unpacking of my practice itself. All right. So, yeah, so as I was saying, this was the persona Mimi. And then, sorry, it's kind of poor sharing. All right, are we seeing the full screen of it? Okay, perfect, thank you. Yeah, so because this was the persona I created back in 2018, I wanted to make some, I mean, it was natural for me to kind of make more changes within the practice, but then, so I performed once more, again as Mimi for continuing videos or installation series. So this time the video was made to show kind of the course of objectification of female identity. So it starts from a blank slate, literally a blank slate, because the performance was also based on how I put the blue paint on myself. And it was also a direct interpretation of transforming my skin into a blue screen. So it was kind of a word play, but then I just keep doing it. And by doing that, I could kind of successfully transform my skin into a blank slate where I can put like additional images on top of me, like alternative or forced images on top of me as a metaphor to show how female identities are kind of sometimes forced by male gaze within our society to put up another image. So yeah, the video starts with a blank slate as any image to put on top of Mimi, and then it kind of progresses into a video with her skin covered with kind of male-looking images, but I'm saying it's male-looking because it's machine learning generated images. We never know what it is, but then in my human perception, it turns out to be looking like a male portrait. So that was also an interesting practice. And then it kind of ends up in Mimi that's covered with female game characters. And I picked two of them just as an example, which is Juliet Starling from the game called Lollipop Chainsaw and Widowmaker from Overwatch. So it was just some selections from the video game that uses this overly sexualized female characters. And for that male-looking images, it was such an interesting practice because this, the image on the left is Mimi in my first semester in RISD. That was the first time I took the portrait of it. So it's covered with another kind of old female video game character. And so I used my own performance photograph as a source image to see how it's gonna turn out if I put it into a machine learning practice. And then because I was using a pre-existing model that was using a lot of data set full of pet images and male portraits. So all the images it was automatically generating was somehow very monstrous looking, but then to my perception, it looked like kind of, boys. So I started to call it machine learning boys. So yeah, these are some screenshots of each video performances. And as part of the video performance series, so I tried kind of different look of Mimi. So Mimi became like a holy mother figure, and so I call it Holy Mimi. So it was to convey the narrative of like generalization and categorization of female identity. And to convey the narrative, Mimi here with this look, Mimi sings the verses of Sade's Pearls, and I have the lyrics later on. And she sings this song while degrading into these images in the background. So, and the images in the background is from the game called Princess Maker, which was the motivation for me actually to start all this in first semester of RISD, because it was the game I played when I was a kid, as like 10 years old. But then it's a game that's full of very misogynistic kind of features from the story of the game to literal like the interface of the game itself. Just to briefly introduce the game, Princess Maker is a simulation game where the father, like the player, is the father of this girl character, and the father has to raise an abandoned girl fairy, which is the female character of this game. And you have to, as a player, you have to raise this kid until she reaches the age of 19. Yeah, so the background images, there are three endings of the simulation game, because it's like a life simulation. You have certain career endings that's gonna be decided based on the stats you have. Because the endings, the career path for this character was really shocking, shockingly misogynistic. They only have really few options of professional occupations, and then most of them are categorized into a mother figure or a caregiver figure and a wife figure, a wife of a something, a wife of a king. They don't even say queen, it's always the wife of something, and then a mistress characters. So it was really shocking for me that this game was popular among like little girls back in Korea, and also to adult men back in Korea. So like this huge gap between these two big audiences of this game was kind of disturbing to me. So I started to use a lot of images and contents from this game. So yeah, one of the background is called Nursemaid. The name of these images are the actual naming of those ending careers within the game. So yeah, I picked the image of nursemaid, I picked the image of royal concubine, and I picked the image of millionaire's wife. And then Mimi slowly degrades into the background image while singing Sade's Pearls. So these are the lyrics I sang on the left, and on the right, this was part of the script for the whole video performances. Right. So for the final installation, as I briefly talked about already, so I in a dark corner of approximately 10 feet, yeah, 10 by 10 space, which I just emptied my living room basically. So there's two projections going on. There's a master projection on the wall, which is a little bit framed into a triptych kind of structure to show these three different performances of Mimi. And then there's a ceiling projection that's happening. So there's basically two big projections going on. And then there's three one-way mirror sheets that's hanging in front of the master projection. Because I've been doing a lot of like material experimentations the whole second year, trying to kind of develop an operation system of like distributing the light around the space, but at the same time showing the image on top of the material itself. And then to create this immersive installation that's that as a metaphor of haunting misogyny, like haunting images of traumatic images that's lurking in plain sight. So the three one-way mirror sheets hanging in front of the master projection, they display the video itself on top of it, and while spreading the light around the room. And it spreads the projection, actually, the actual video performance around the room. And on the ceiling projection is directly connected to the movement of the reflections on the wall. So they're all kind of connected. This ceiling projection only shows when there's the reflection on the wall. So it was kind of interactive installation, but interacting within itself, not like the audience has to interact with them. And yeah, these are some close-up pictures. And this was how the ceiling projection was working. It was very glitchy and very ghostly kind of looking. And I intended to make it as like a direct translation of haunting image or haunting trauma of oneself. And additionally, I started to make the animation. I started to develop actually a virtual 3D space as an expanded cinema of this video performances. And this was actually part of the new practice I started to do when we moved out from the studio, that I thought there should be an additional kind of dimension to this piece when I'm not going to be able to deliver the installation in an ideal way. So this one is not finished. I'm still working on it. And I think that was kind of part of, I wouldn't say exciting, but it was an unexpected, but I don't know, positive change for me when we had to move out from the studio. I was just focusing on what I can do in this situation while not necessarily commenting directly on this COVID situation, because part of it was because even though it was affecting me a lot, I had some work that I've been working on for a while and I wanted to finish it in its own way, not like changing the whole thesis piece as a commentary to what's going on for artists. So, but then it was a positive addition to the piece, I would say. And yeah, and I hope you can go back to the publications website and then see the documentation, because I think it's totally different experience. I've been told that it's very different from just me talking about the piece one by one. So yeah, it's just this video. You can just click in and it's gonna play the sound as well. Right. Just gonna pause because I'm not sure with the audio quality of screen shared video playing. So yeah, open to questions and everything.
Sure. So if the audience wants to chime in with some questions, you have the question and answer button there. You're welcome to ask Joon about her work, her thesis experience, or in general life as a graduate student at RISD. Let's see. We have, thank you for walking us through your page and your presentation. That was great. So I'll start off with a question. Something that we hear a lot from recent graduates is that they wish they had taken advantage of some of the opportunities a little bit sooner. A lot of times your graduate experience goes by quickly. It's anywhere from 1 to 3 years, but the average being 2 years. It kind of comes and goes in the blink of an eye. Is there any opportunity or resource that stands out to you as something that you wish you had known about sooner?
Oh yeah, definitely. So I spend most of the time in CIT building, and I thought in the beginning, I remember thinking, oh, this is such a limited space for me. I want to visit like other studios, other like shops for, metalworks or woodworks. Although in CIT they still have it. But then yeah, so in CIT for me, co-works in the first floor was the best resource that's actually open to like undergrads and graduates and like everyone. Whereas all the other CIT floors were limited. They have like really, really specific kind of card access, only allowed to like each major. Like,
right, the best, yeah.
But then coworks is just, there's everything you can have in terms of digital fabrication. And the qualities are just really good, and then there's students helping you all the time. But then I didn't even know about this place until, they have the orientation and everything, but then even though it was very, the first semester, first weeks are really confusing. You just have to absorb everything. And I didn't have a chance to visit there. I knew the existence, but I didn't have the chance to visit there. But it's totally worth just going there, talking to them, and just get to know like what equipments you have access to. so that you have like additional idea of what you can do. It's gonna boost up all the imaginations when you know what's available. And CoWorks was perfect for that.
For that. Yeah, so CoWorks, the Office of Graduate Studies tries to offer some info sessions with CoWorks so that you can go and take a tour and do a mini orientation with them. It's run by peer tutors who can teach you how to use all of the equipment, help you figure out how to make your projects come into reality, everything from 3D printers to heavy duty industrial sewing machines, laser cutters, 3D modeling, and then some, even more materials and equipment than that. It's a phenomenal resource. So that's a really good one to point out, Joon. Thank you. So you did use some different materials in your work, not just, digital formats and such. Were there one of the questions we're getting was, did you take any elective classes that helped you explore and develop your process outside of just your major?
Yes, and I was hesitating because it was part of my, so digital media, and there's a concentration called CTC, which is computation, technology, and culture. Might be a little bit wrong, but yeah. So CTC was like a concentration you can take from any major, but it was closely related to digital media just because a lot of faculties in digital media are teaching courses in CTC concentration. And I took a lot of courses in CTC. Some of them were called like Immersive Spaces by Mattia Casalegno, which I took in the first semester, and it was so helpful because coming from painting background and filmmaking, I was kind of familiar with like dealing with the image itself, but then I was really ignorant about all this technology that's available. And I just needed to, that was the whole point of coming to RISI digital media, like I needed to learn them. And Mattia's class, Immersive Spaces, was really helpful in a way that I got introduced to so many different technologies, from coding and all different ways of coding, all different languages of coding, to like projection technology, projection mapping, and like interactive design, and and they were so broad, honestly. Like, to be honest, it was really overwhelming also, but then it was just perfectly overwhelming, if you know what I mean. And I got introduced to so many technologies that's available that I couldn't even imagine. And that's why I was keep like working on projections, mainly because of, mainly thanks to the Matthias class, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's great. So one thing that incoming students hear us talk a lot about is your graduate program director, your GPD. In your case was Shona during your time, I believe. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of that relationship and connecting with people in your department to make some of these projects and ideas happen?
Sure. I think,
or even how they help you find opportunities and things like that on campus, if that's.
Sure. So I think in every other major, actually, they have separate like department head and GPDs. But in our case, we're a really small department, and Shona Kitchen was a department head and the GPD. And yeah, she was just really helpful. The relationship was wonderful because I think partly because she's a really open-minded person. And I think a lot of GPDs in every major are the same way. I mean, they're always open to help you in so many ways, actually. I would talk to Shona about like really conceptual kind of concerns about my practice, and also about like really general kind of concerns related to my career after graduation. And she would just the interaction was just consistent. Like it's not like you had to set up a meeting once a week or once a month to talk about everything all together. It was just like you could always talk to her when you knock on the office, and then from simply sharing the links of like all the resources online to actually talking about everything and having a meeting with other person she would introduce me to. Like it was very all different ways of interacting. But and yeah, and then mostly I think GPD person is always really informative in terms of they know many faculties and other majors, of course, like as their peers. So they would just connect you to a professor, for example, in like painting department or in film department, if they think your practice, if they think you need to talk to them about your stuff, and they will have better response or experience on certain things, they would just do it right away. There was no, like weird politics or anything between the majors,
Yeah,
it's really helpful.
that's great.
Mm-hmm.
So a few people are asking a similar question about how your classes in D+M transitioned to online format during COVID. How did that work? Were you still able to get the kinds of critiques you wanted for your thesis project? What worked for you or what didn't during that time frame?
So yeah, everything worked, I think. Okay, for me, I think it was working pretty well, mainly because as it was my last semester in university, and then the courses I took was my thesis development course, and then I didn't take any other classes than ISP, which is an independent study program where you can, and this is really great, actually a really great program in graduate, because you can always find, you can kind of reach out to anyone, basically any faculty, whether they're part-time or full-time, and also even from Brown University, like everyone, to just work on your own independent project, whatever it is. You can design your own curriculum. You have to design your own syllabus, but then you design it with this person who's going to be a supervisor to your project. But anyway, so I did ISP with my technician, actually, our technician in digital media, Stephen Cook. And so because everything was kind of meeting based anyways, it was working pretty well, because it just, of course, it was hard to kind of show the progress physically, but then the meetings are still they were still happening, and the specific kind of condition this Zoom meetings require was kind of overwhelming. But at the same time, people get adjusted, and then there's new like meeting rules that's considered, appropriate for the class situation. But yeah, it was definitely hard to have more fluid conversation, I would say, because of this, everyone's muted and I'm the only one talking, and this situation is not, I think, is not natural for a classroom situation. But then, I think it was slowed down a little bit because of that, every discussions, but it was still happening. And yeah, and just the thing was everything had to be documented digitally in order to effectively kind of talk about things through screen shares and everything. That would have been the most annoying part for most of the people, but it was working. Yeah.
That's good to hear. So an incoming student is asking, within your program then, do you have any advice for someone who's coming in the fall, knowing that D+M is going to be, you know, a hybrid of virtual and social distance studio classes? Any pointers from your time spent in the virtual classroom that might help them from the beginning?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I just talked about it, but then I think it's important to have a good digital documentations of even little things at this point. I know if you don't like, if you're type of person like me who's really, you know, who thinks all this PowerPoint kind of presentation is kind of pain in the ass. It's really a little bit of torture, but then I think it's always better to have, yeah, it's good to document things, even though you just want to talk about this one little thing you've done last week. It's better to show still into a text or an image or yeah, I think this materials that was kind of supposed to be additional, like that was treated as secondary before all this like online courses situation. I think they're becoming more major, of course, and I think it's not a bad thing though. It's just it was always there. The need for the documentation was always there, and it's just that you have to make it already.
Right. Yeah, it's more important for communication now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I think I heard a lot of digital media courses are still happening physically, and I think they're planning a lot of like, you know, section studio times and workshop times, which I mean, of course, I don't know the details because I graduated, but then I think it will work really well because thinking about how digital media has always been really small department, and each workshop, like it would have maximum like 10 people in one class, like one workshop space, like one classroom. So if they're gonna section it into like two, you know, morning section and afternoon section, something like that, I think it won't be a big difference than the experience I had before all this.
Right, right. So yeah, just for those listening, the plan is that studio classes will continue to be held online, just in socially distanced spaces, whether that's by scheduling or by adjustments to the physical space to make more room for everyone, or make use of other classrooms and rooms to spread everybody out at the same time. Let me look at the questions. At what point did you begin planning your thesis and really honing in on what it was that you wanted to do for your thesis? Was that something that you start working on right away, or did it evolve over time?
It definitely evolved over time, but then the theme I had was pretty consistent from the beginning of RISD, the beginning of first semester in RISD, but I think it depends, of course. There was many cohorts of mine who worked on many different themes throughout the whole 2-year experience, but then it's just very different experience, I think. I had a chance to keep working on my thesis, my theme that I didn't know that I was gonna work on until the end of my RISD years. But then I had a chance to keep develop or like keep try different kind of ways to show this certain concept. Like I had chance to keep making like iterations of one thing, which was really fun. But then in other cases, of course, they could just keep explore the different concepts, and it's and for me, so it started from the very beginning, but then the point where I decided that I'm gonna work on it as my thesis was like first semester of second year, I would say, when we had to start writing the thesis. And it was really helpful to take all this elective courses and shaping kind of what I don't like or what I like within my practice and what works or what doesn't. So yeah, I was pretty open, even though it turned out that I've been working on the same theme for a while. At that very moment, I wasn't like conscious about that. And I was just focusing on all these different experimentations I was taking. And it was really, I was trying really hard to, stay open-minded.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like when I think back, I had kind of a consistent theme going on.
Right. Did you do you recommend making use of any of the writing support on campus? We have the Arts and Language Center where they offer specific assistance for the written thesis for graduate students. I'm curious if that's something you took advantage of, or looking back, wish that you had.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I as an international student, yeah, it was a lot of people recommended me to, get in touch with Art and Language Center because they're always they're really helpful actually for my thesis, not even for my just for my thesis. I've been working with them from the first semester for like writing assignments, like also not just about the writing per se. I could work on how to articulate myself, like how to theorize what I'm working on, which is really important for, artist practices.
Yeah, no, and I'm
Yes.
glad you mentioned that because they do offer, peer tutoring and guidance on public speaking, which is, important for critique situations, and not just for international students, but, domestic students as well. A lot of times students come into a graduate program, a few years or more after undergraduate and have kind of lost being in that mode of writing, and particularly when it comes to writing about one's work. It can kind of be intimidating, especially in that first semester where you realize, oh, I need to write a paper again. And it's been a while since I've done
Yeah,
that.
oh, what was the MLA style?
Right.
I don't remember any of that. And then, I mean, of course, you can find the online resources. Oh, but then also A&L has such a great online resource as well. So
Yes.
we have all these guidelines from really practical things about like CV or resume writing to a really conceptual ideation or even just like grammar, like very basic grammar issues as well.
Right.
Yeah, and with that, I think the library in general has such a great resource, not just about the books that you can book out. There's actually the researchers in library that you can contact and then just talk about your practice if you're not even sure what kind of book to look for, like if you're not sure what kind of term to use, if you're not sure what kind of theory or what kind of like artist you have to look for as references. They're really helpful.
Yeah.
They're gonna set up a meeting with you and just talk about this issue you have, and then they'll come up with all this like book recommendations, and not even just a book, but the theories, the concepts that's relatable to your practice, and all these articles and everything. It's really, really great system they have there.
Yeah, and I will add to that they have adapted really quickly to the online learning format and are offering nearly all of their research and reference services virtually, either through chats and meetings, phone calls, video chats, and they can help you in the same way they would face-to-face. And same with Arts and Language. They've moved a lot of their tutoring services online as well. So those will continue to be available in the fall. So we have a few people asking about what's next for you now that you've graduated and you're no longer a student. what does the future look like? What is, job prospects, things like that? What's next for you?
So for me, I'm very like persistent about me keep doing this art practices independently. So I just got the RISI Graduate Commons grant that I can work on for next few months, which is really, really great. It was a lot of relief. I have a show coming up in winter, a group show, and a solo show in summer in Seoul, and a winter group show in Boston. So for now, yeah, I'm still gonna work on my stuff that I in relation to my thesis practice. Actually, it's gonna be keep developing. I don't think my thesis is the end point of anything. It was just a start point actually for better development of my artist practice. So yeah, I'm gonna keep working on that, and I'm really excited to actually keep working on the practice I've done just because of this COVID situation. Actually, I'm planned to show those works in my winter group show.
That's great. Yeah. So you mentioned the Graduate Commons grant. Can you speak a little bit about that process and, what you were awarded to work on?
Yes. So, I just got it, right? So I'm still kind of tuning all these plans I had. So I had to submit the proposal with the accurate kind of budget and, like the statement of the whole project. I worked on it for quite a long time, actually. And I think it was even worse just working on it, like just more articulation and like more precise budgeting. It was really helpful. And so I got awarded to keep working on this project, just like I said now, like as an extension of my thesis project. But then because the thesis work itself was the installation, and I still had a lot of independent practices that I wanted to develop on its own. So I kind of laid out all those plans, but then as part of this bigger project of web trauma and haunting images, which is the title of my thesis project. So yeah, and then I got awarded a full amount, really thankfully. Mm-hmm. So I can, and if I go specifically, it's gonna be like bookmaking project, a combination of bookmaking and also a fake documentary production, and it's gonna be more of machine learning, like just making all those boy images basically. So it's gonna be combination of many different practices, but then still kind of falls into this theme of online sexual objectification.
Mm-hmm. So I just linked in the chat for everyone the link to information about the Graduate Commons grant, because that's a question our Office of Graduate Studies receives frequently, is opportunities for funding. The Grad Commons grant is open to all graduate students, both current and graduating. And the grant applications were due towards the end of March. It was extended a little bit this year because of COVID. And then the recipients were notified in May. This year we were able to fund about 30 of the 90 applications, so about a third of the applications. So it's quite competitive, but a wide variety of projects. Students from across all disciplines and departments got their projects funded. And just to add one more thing, that support is available for grant writing as well, both through the library and through arts and language. So we have a lot of students who will work closely with those resources to put their grant proposals together, because obviously that's something as a professional artist that is useful skill to have. Definitely. Let's see. Are there any books or writers or texts that you specifically enjoy or recommend on the topics that you've been working on, such as gender and digital culture?
There was a lot. Like throughout, I collect all the readings you receive from the class, or, every readings you get recommended from the library or from A&L or any professors or your peers. I kind of collect everything, whether or not I read them right away or not. But so there's a lot. Some of them I can think of. There's a really great book about theorizing the screen, like the word screen itself as a dimension to display an image or a story, basically. And it's a book, I have it there. It's by Juliana Bruno, but then her theory is really, really thorough about the screens and the immersive spaces and expanded cinema and architecture. And the part about, there were a lot of parts she described, a really interesting theory about projection technology and architecture. And that was really helpful for me because I was specifically working on a multi-channel video installations back then, and not just terming it, like, not just naming it into like video installation. Like she kind of opens up into many different theories. Yeah, and then I was also like reading a lot of game theories, like video games, also like the gender issues within video games. Lisa Nakamura was one of the great writers who wrote specifically about gamings and an online culture, something about, like online image circulation system and stuff like that. That's part of the biggest function of what's happening online. It was a lot more, but I can think of.
Yeah, sure. Lots of reading over the past 2 years, I'm sure. So Joon, if you want to put your website in the chat, that way people can, check out your work further. At the beginning of the chat, I did put your link to your digital publication. If you want to put your specific website or your Instagram, or that way people can connect with you that way.
Yeah, so my website, it doesn't have the hyperlink, but it's joonjunyoon.com. I just put it in the chat window. Please take a look, because I haven't updated fully after graduation, but I did update. I do have a new section that you can kind of take a look at my thesis book itself, actually.
Great.
The PDF of the thesis book.
Okay.
Yeah, because you're supposed to print all the books, actually, but this semester I think a lot of departments decided to just keep it online, like just keep the submission within PDF format.
Right.
Not stressing everyone to print them, because it also took a lot of longer time to receive the printed copy, and because and we were not supposed to come into the building and hand in the book itself.
Right. So traditionally, all graduate students will submit a copy of the written thesis to the RISD library for archiving, to be added to the collection. And this year that was just done by PDF, to be added to the Digital Commons archive. So they are actually going to be viewable online for, forever and ever. And in past years, and hopefully to be resumed, a physical copy of that thesis book is also submitted to the library, and that can clearly take a number of formats, and be, an art object in and of itself oftentimes as well. So yeah, to be able to see Joon's copy of that on her website is a treat.
just part of it though.
And the rest of it should be in the digital commons in the next month or so. We have Mark Calhoun, the librarian who does all the archiving, is busy uploading all of the 200 and some theses from this year to that system. So that brings us to time. Thank you so much, Joon, for sharing all of this with us and for answering questions. This will be posted on the Graduate Studies website under the Watch a Webinar section within a few weeks. And there's a variety of webinars there for you to view as well. But thanks to everybody for joining us, and especially to Joon for sharing her work.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Take care. Bye-bye.